Welcome to our session titled Preparing Learners for Team-Based Community Interventions Through an Interprofessional Virtual Simulation. My name is Lauren El-Assad, and I am the Assistant Director of the Center for Health IPE at the University of Texas at Austin. Today, I'll be presenting with Veronica Young with the Center for Health IPE and Pippa Mason and Mary Mulvaney, both with the Steve Hicks School of Social Work. We do not have any conflicts of interest to disclose. It took a village to develop the simulation, and I want to acknowledge the student and faculty leaders who helped from UT Austin and Austin Community College to make this simulation possible.
Like many of you, when we were hit by COVID-19 last March 2020, we had to pivot very quickly during the pandemic. Initially, we were trying to identify an alternative to the poverty simulation that we run 4 times a year since 2015. And while searching for an alternative, our goal is to deliver a simulation virtually that will prepare our learners for team-based community interventions. We were aware of an in-person simulation from the CDC Foundation called Health and Wellbeing for All. We obtained permission from the CDC Foundation to adapt their simulation, and we redesigned it for virtual delivery for an interprofessional experience.
For this simulation, we chose to focus on the social determinants of health because it provides a framework that draws in and values the expertise of a broad range of professional backgrounds. So it really was a natural fit for a simulation like this. We were drawing from so many different schools across campus. Using the framework of the social determinants of health also encourages participants to think about a public health issue from a multifaceted perspective. So in the simulation, participants applied the social determinants of health to specifically obesity. Examining obesity through the social determinants of health helps participants to understand the way that obesity is a complex topic. For example, the varying ties of discrimination against people with obesity, both by healthcare providers and in general daily life. Or as another example, how participants can unpack the intersections of obesity and mental health. In addition, the topic of obesity was and is particularly timely during the COVID-19 pandemic, as we're seeing how obesity has been linked to increased risks of hospitalization and other more serious outcomes. And again, the weight of challenges like provider bias and discrimination have become even more significant during the pandemic. We had 4 learning objectives for the simulation. The first was to discuss the need for data to guide community interventions and programming. The second was to apply concepts of the social determinants of health in improving health outcomes and the health of a community. The third was to reflect on one's role in improving health by addressing social determinants using a population-based approach. The fourth was to collaborate interprofessionally to address complex social determinants that impact health outcomes. The structure of this simulation involved both real play and role play. Participants learned about the social determinants of health and obesity in short, less than 10-minute theory bursts. There was also a skit and some setting of the scene that we did to introduce the scenario and the way that the activity would work. Participants then spent time in breakout rooms, which was split between asking them to speak from their own professional experience in team activities, and then asking them to take on the persona of an individual character from another profession in the mock task force simulation. In the simulation, they imagine how they might think and respond to that situation as if they were in the other person's shoes. So for example, a student from pharmacy might have been asked to play the role of a businessman who was running a shop. And so it was both speaking from their own perspective and their own professional experience and taking on the perspective of another person. We believe this mix of real play and role play helped the group to achieve a balance of authenticity and empathy. A major purpose of the simulation was to help participants dig below a surface level understanding. You may have seen this iceberg metaphor before. If you haven't, it's the idea that what you see on the surface of the water is only a fraction of what makes up the iceberg. In our case, how simulation participants support patients with obesity in the future is our top of the iceberg goal. However, for the unseen part of the iceberg, we hope that participants can understand and begin to think about tackling upstream social determinants of health, not just downstream health impacts. We hope that participants change how they relate to other professionals, that they consider provider bias, and that they think about how to engage in macro level work and much more.
In order to maximize learning opportunities for students, we recruited social work, pharmacy, and nursing students to be the facilitators of the program. This allowed them to practice their small group interprofessional facilitation skills while allowing more students from the various disciplines to be participants during the simulation. We provided written tips on how to facilitate small groups, as well as the detailed facilitator guide for the simulation, which provides a specific script for the facilitators. Handouts were provided to the facilitators via a shared Google document folder. A 1-hour training was conducted via Zoom to teach them how to use the facilitator's guide and the supporting documents. The students were expected to read through the materials and meet with a co-facilitator to divide up the facilitation duties for the session. Faculty and community practitioners were available in each breakout session to support the student facilitators during the simulation experience. While the students did a fabulous job overall, based on their feedback after the simulation, we recommend a longer training session to increase their confidence in conducting the simulation the next time it's done.
And now I'll share our program evaluation, which we combined the data from our November 2020 pilot simulation and our March 2021 simulation. As you can see here, the majority of participants between the two simulations were students, but we also have medical residents, pharmacy residents, as well as faculty and staff present from both UT Austin and Austin Community College. Looking at the participants' profession, in our November pilot, we primarily recruited from 5 professions. And then in our March simulation, we opened it up to other professions, and we were very, very excited to see the overwhelming amount of professions that participated in our March simulation. Looking at the overall results from our program survey, to the left, you will see that we asked our participants to rate their overall experience with today's activity, and over 95% reported excellent and very good. And on the right side, we asked them if they would recommend this to a colleague. And again, we see over 94% reported strongly agree and agree. In terms of the learning objectives, we're very, very pleased that for all 4 objectives, that overwhelmingly that we met each of these objectives, especially if you look at objective number 2, to actually allow them through a simulation to apply concepts of social determinants of health that was reported by 100% of the participants as meeting it very well or well. We also inquire about what type of knowledge and skills they gain as a result of this experience. And even throughout both simulations, the participants reported the top 3 knowledge and skills gained, as you see reported here. In terms of skills, the first one they listed is working with key stakeholders, participating in a task force meeting, and learning how to develop a community action plan together. The most frequent new knowledge gain included collaborating with stakeholders on community interventions and learning a process including the PDSA cycle to guide the development of an action plan. Looking at our data for collaboration and also relevance, at the top, you see that overwhelmingly our participants felt that the experience promoted collaborative problem solving. It also provided opportunities for them to learn about, with, and from each other, which are represented by the 2 middle bars, and that 100% of our participants reported that this activity is relevant to their professional work.
We were really thrilled with the feedback that we received from faculty who attended the sessions as either observers or supervisors in the small breakout sessions. Every faculty member rated the statement, "This activity is relevant for my learners," as strongly agree or agree. This indicates that the simulation is a great learning experience for students across the helping and health professions, as well as other areas such as business and athletic training. In addition, each faculty member indicated they would participate again and encourage, if not require, their students to participate. They came up with ideas based on the task force simulation that could be implemented in their classes, in the university, and in the community. Creating the simulation in a virtual environment makes it accessible to more faculty and students, and it creates enthusiasm for additional interprofessional educational experiences.
I was a student participant in this simulation, so to first speak from my own experience, I feel that I learned a lot about the different roles and perspectives of an array of professions. I also had an aha moment that sometimes we had different language or frameworks for similar concepts, so I learned how to seek common understanding and not get hung up on specific professional jargon. Other participants highlighted that they too broadened their understanding of how other disciplines approached or understood work. And many participants shared that they were more willing to consider other perspectives or to even be aware of other perspectives than they would have prior to engaging in the simulation. Furthermore, many participants said that they were interested in being more involved and taking action after the simulation, speaking to wanting to get involved in interprofessional task groups and wanting to be more involved from their community on a macro level.
We concluded that the simulation effectively prepares learners for team-based community interventions, engages learners in learning about, with, and from each other, and trains advanced learners for small group interprofessional facilitation. In terms of next steps, we plan to disseminate our findings through scholarly publication, develop new modules to enhance learning, work with programs to ensure that the simulation is required for all health professions, and engage faculty and learners for other programs.